Welcome, listeners, to www.IronRadio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner or regular shirt to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiology and nutrition professor of about 20 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens. I'm a strength coach, a power lifter, occasional Highland Games athlete. I run Strength Guild.
Nice. This is Dr. Mike T. Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet certification, associate professor at the Carrick Institute, and still down in South Padre, Texas, and got out kiteboarding 3 times yesterday and didn't lose a vehicle to the upcoming tide, so I'm happy.
Wow.
I've been watching horror stories, like it's a show called I Survived, and several of them were people like flooding. So that made me think of you.
Oh,
so, getting trapped in floods and tides and yeah.
I was watching it coming up because it was kind of coming up. I'm like, oh, we'll be all right. And then it started coming up a little faster, and then the road to get out of there like disappeared because it's just a beach anyway. Mm-hmm. So luckily I had been out there before, and I watched one other vehicle go out, but it's a little scary when you put the windshield wipers on because there's water hitting the windshield from underneath. But
that is scary, man. God.
Yeah.
And you're driving on hopefully a beach. So
yeah. Yeah, it was a good thing I knew where to drive. Otherwise, it's quite paradoxical because where it's hard pack is actually more wet because the water isn't going to seep through. So if you don't know that and you try to avoid the water, you'll just bury it.
I've been watching some stuff about RVing. I've been thinking like 10 years down the road toward retirement and stuff. Not kidding. And I'm thinking, I'd like to get an RV and travel around the country, but some of these guys, they park on the beach, because one of the cool things is you get to go, you can live in your house kind of, but you got to watch the tides. I've seen some horror stories about that, because like you wake up in the morning, oh, I misjudged the tides,
My RV's underwater.
Now it's a boat.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, and there's, I think, is it near Homer, Alaska, or somewhere in Alaska where I think they have like the greatest tidal shift. And I want to say it's like several feet within a day potentially or something just crazy.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody, we are going to talk about social gym irritations today. We probably touched on this a little bit before, and before we hit record, Phil was talking about how he's never really spent time in commercial gyms, so maybe we'll just tap his expertise about, how he prevents some of this nonsense at Strength Guild. It might be timely because, from my own personal perspective, it's time for me to get back to the gym. I've been lifting in my basement for a year, and I don't want to keep doing that, right? The variety of the equipment I have, it just isn't there, and even just the intensity and the social thing can be a motivator, too, and I'm pretty introverted. I like to go in there with headphones, do my thing, and leave, but just the fact that you're somewhere in a dedicated space at a dedicated time, it's just better. Anyway, that's also going to re-immerse an introvert like me back into dealing with people, and so that's going to bring its challenges. So we're going to talk about social gym irritants, and maybe listeners, you can think about, oh man, I've seen that one. In fact, send us an email and, let us know if you've had a bad experience like that. But a couple news tidbits here.
Strength and muscle sport news.
These are things that just came up in my classes this week, so I thought our listeners might be interested in this. This first one is from Jasper Cantrell. This is through labroots.com. is there an upper limit to the benefits of exercise? Now, Mike, you've talked about this before, I think with, was it metabolic rate and calorie burning, or like at some point, is there diminishing returns? And
the constrained hypothesis, which is kind of Ponzer stuff, that at some point, at least with walking, exercise, possibly there's some other arguments there too, that you can only expend so many calories from exercise where you just start becoming more efficient at it. They primarily looked at it in hunter-gatherer tribes with walking. And when it translated the data, it was, once you get above around 15,000 steps per day, you go from 15,000 to 20,000 or 20,000 to 25,000, you're not seeing the same rate of energy use over time compared to being lower in that spectrum. It just gets capped and nonlinear.
That fits with my personal observations. I've known a lot of people who counted steps per day on the high end. Like, these are already fit people. And you're like, oh, it didn't really change much. My body weight didn't change much. I'm like, well, it's going to flatline at some point, the efficiency, I would think. This one is not about the real high end. And in fact, we have to be careful interpreting this for our people, because this is a Gen Pop study, but it says, is there a threshold, again, to the limits of the cardiovascular and health benefits of exercise? Is there a point where running longer doesn't actually help? Whether or not there's an upper threshold to this finding remains conflicted, according to the article. Many studies have found that there is a point of diminishing returns at higher levels of fitness. So there you go, Dr. Miguel. Questionnaires have been the go-to method of measuring the physical activity of large populations for decades, but questionnaires, of course, rely on patient honesty and accuracy. I think in nutrition that becomes obvious with diet logs, right? But same thing with exercise logs. It says the goal here was to do the same study, but with more reliable data. A new survey from teams across the United Kingdom used accelerometers, and they thought that was the key, and that was quite different. Now, Mike, you're already mentioning steps per day, but, the ubiquitous nature of Apple Watches, and everybody's got an accelerometer, the student snicker, I say, we used to call those pedometers, right? And it's a slight, it is a different thing in a sense, but where you wear it on your body, we did some research on that. And anyway, this study looked at the data of nearly 90,000 participants over 2 years. One of the clearest observations was that physical activity did directly correlate with general lifestyle risk factors. It says those participants on the lower end of the physical activity spectrum were smokers, heavy drinkers, had high body mass, and previous hypertension. Those that conducted vigorous physical activity for longer than 90 minutes a week had their risks reduced by more than 5 times. It says the results conflicted with earlier studies utilizing questionnaires, however, as their source of data. Considering accelerometer-based fitness tracking is still relatively new, the study should be taken with a grain of salt, but the study concludes, quote, in this large population-based cohort, higher levels of moderate intensity and vigorous intensity physical activity, as well as total volume, were inversely associated with the risk of incident cardiovascular disease, and here it is, with no evidence of a threshold effect. Isn't that interesting? The finding of no threshold effect aligns with the recommendations of the UK Chief Medical Officer's report on physical activity, that some physical activity is good, but more is better. So, and again, I think population specificity, right? These are not people at, to your point, Mike, at the 20,000 steps a day, But this is interesting. At least I'd like to see this scale, right? I don't have this full paper, but where does the scale tap out? Like their most active people were how active, But this says, quote, more is better, close quote. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. The average person just needs to move more.
Totally.
Especially today. I mean, so.
With our people, I mean, the only risk, of course, would be, the zealots that they're already overtraining. And if they get a more is better message, then they're going to be back in the gym for 2 a days, 3 a days,
Yeah, but even then, I mean, there's a threshold when you're talking, somebody's a freaking 800-pound deadlifter. We don't need to go in, we're going to need longer to recover. But one could argue that, okay, just get your ass outside and walk.
Yes.
Things like that to recuperate, and that's still moving and exercising. So, and that could actually do some good. So,
recovery is a good point. Yeah, there's no recovery from walking,
Yeah. The only exception there, too, is if you're really trying to gain mass, like doing 20,000 steps a day, unless you want to even really eat more, you may want to back down on the step count for a little while.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's an interesting point that a lot of people, when they try to get in a positive energy balance, they default to eat more. And that's helpful. That's true. But sometimes you have to do less, right, to get in that positive energy balance and build some mass.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah. A lot of time that just depends on how much time you have to eat. If I had a choice, I'd have someone move more and eat even more. But at some point, you can't spend your whole day eating either.
Yeah.
Yes, and it brings us back to the old any sport done to be elite is not for your health.
Yeah,
right.
We're not doing it. Yeah, so maybe let's say the elite weightlifter or whatever has to rest more and this and that. They're not doing it for their cardiovascular health or any health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a T-shirt we need. That Phil-ism. Elite sport is not about health.
Yeah. No, I got into that the other day with some people.
Yep.
They're like, "Oh, my buddy runs marathons and this and that." I was like, "That's fine." And he's got a resting heart rate of 40. Yeah, okay. Well, how's his knees? How's his this? How's his that? Runners and stuff do generally tend to have good blood work and good heart rates, but their knees are screwed. And that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Orthopedically, most athletes are wrecked, even though their blood markers may say they look great.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's various aspects of health besides, heart rate and blood markers. But
it's almost like we planned this next study. It's about high testosterone in health, because we were just talking about this, of course, and this is, I did not expect this, but this is International Journal of Cancer 2021. I don't think I mentioned this last week. Prospective analysis of testosterone and sex hormone binding globulin, and listeners, that's just a protein in your blood that ties up testosterone and other sex hormones. But basically, with the risk of 19 types of cancer, so high T and 19 types of cancer in men and postmenopausal women in the UK Biobank. So I guess we have a British episode today. It says, we investigated the associations of estimated free and total circulating testosterone and SHBG and compared them with 19 cancers in the UK Biobank. 182,608 men and 122,112 postmenopausal women who were cancer-free at baseline. They got involved in this. Here's the results. In men, higher free T was associated with higher risk of melanoma and prostate cancer. Now, the melanoma one, that bothered me a bit. I have a family history of that. So it says higher free T, more melanoma. The prostate cancer, I don't think is going to surprise anybody. That's people with prostate cancer, they even go on like androgen deprivation therapy and things like that. So, let's hope that doesn't strike any of us while we're young enough to matter. It is worth noting that there's more aggressive and much slower types of prostate cancer. But the risks here. Let's see, relative risk with melanoma 1.35. So. Yeah, not paltry enough to matter. And, let's face it, growths, testosterone, I can see that feeding a growth of almost any kind. Prostate cancer, 1.10, so a little weaker, actually. And you will hear pundits around bodybuilding talk about, well, listen, it's also about estrogen levels and, lots of other factors, DHT specifically, and it says in postmenopausal women, free and total T and SHBG were associated with risks of endometrial cancer, relative risk 1.59. That's pretty high. And breast cancer, 1.32. And again, sex hormone-related cancer. We conclude a novel association of free testosterone with malignant melanoma in men and confirm known associations between testosterone and risks for prostate, breast, and endometrial cancers. So they also looked at liver cancer, but that was more questionable apparently. So, just realities, I suppose. Like to your point, Phil. Like if these guys, like we talked about last week, you want to be high T, that's going to bring a lot of benefits, but there's usually a downside to most things. So.
And yeah, I mean, that's like I try to talk to anybody that comes in. Like, well, one of my buddies had a 14-year-old that's like 105 pounds come in the other day and said he wanted to break Eddie Hall's deadlift record. And, you get those people. And, you have to sit down and have an honest talk with them and be like, okay, here's your goal. Do you realize what you need to do? And where most people fail, the goal always looks great.
Yeah.
Like beating Eddie Hall seems awesome. Now, when you have to sit down and look at the negatives to his life, that's where shit starts getting like, okay, I don't know if I'm ready to put up with that.
Right.
But that's something you need to do honestly as a person with any goal. It's like, okay, look at the goal. Now look at what you need to do and what are the negatives to reach that. Am I going to have to spend hours and hours away from my family? I'm going to have to do this. All that stuff. It all adds up.
It does.
Health and lifestyle. So
I think that's even true with almost anybody who's famous. If you have a truly national caliber or world caliber goal, a lot of these guys have serious dues they have paid, sufferings that you may not want.
The accomplishment itself looks great to us from the outside. That's just like the billionaire. Oh man, he's got a great life. Yeah, but what do you have to do to get there?
Yeah.
He had to work 80 hours a week and,
or sell his soul for certain things. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Sell out and, your scruples are gone. And, is that really worth it? You have to, that's the only question only you can answer.
Mm-hmm.
I knew long ago that I'll never be world's strongest man, aside from the fact I'm not built for it, but I wasn't willing to do it. And that's okay.
Right. Nope. Same thing with me in pro bodybuilding. Like, it's just not in the cards. So how can I enjoy life without making those decisions? Right.
Yeah, but you can still look up to them and admire them and this and that. And, and it's okay. But
yeah,
I think that's also being realistic too, because you see some people who say they want to achieve X, but they're, like you were saying, Phil, their decisions on a day-by-day basis don't necessarily match that. Yeah. And all high-level athletes, we just don't see what they have to do day in and day out and what costs that they've paid. Right. And we may never know.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's not always the just admirable stuff either. You know what I mean? Like when we talk about like testosterone use and stuff like that, or it's not just, oh no, like that young kid, Phil. I'm willing to put in the work. I will do that. It's like, yeah, but that's not the whole story, right? There's
exactly.
There's the realities of drug use and the price of those and and that kind of stuff. So,
tons of things. I mean, there's lots of things that add up. Yep.
Family, issues. Yep.
You can just show him Eddie Hall's video after he broke his record.
Yeah, and he nearly died.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason he stopped. Like, okay, I'm done.
Right.
Put another kilo on there and I was dead.
Yeah. And he's pretty crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's saying something, huh? Too, when I look at this is within a normal testosterone range. You're not going to see a ton of studies about guys with 5 times normal T and what that's going to do to different growths, So the pharmaceutical level of stuff is less charted, than this kind of stuff. So,
yeah. Not to mention all the potential ancillary drugs too. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we done episodes years ago on the polypharmacy. Yeah, if you think it's just one type of testosterone or even a mix to make a bodybuilder or a top powerlifter, no. That's mostly just no. Let me touch on 2 other ones that I just thought this might be interesting health stuff for our listeners before we go to break and talk about gym irritations. These are about magnesium. And we've touched on this over the years. I remember ages ago I wrote an article in Flex magazine about how magnesium could help with carb handling, like better insulin sensitivity and things like that. And I remember they allowed someone to write in, this back in the day when everything, even the rebuttals were on paper, and somebody wrote in, Lowry's got it wrong, it's manganese, not magnesium. And I'm like, there are 5 references that they let me put in there. Like, I'm directly showing you magnesium. So, no, I am not incorrect. But anyway, these are about magnesium and calcium, and I just thought I would share. First of all, and this is maybe especially relevant to our large mammal listeners, it says, U.S. adult magnesium requirements need updating. Impacts of rising body weights. This is by Andrea Rosenoff. This was actually from November of last year. But it says adequate magnesium intakes are associated with lower diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. But magnesium is low in modern diets. And in fact, it says the published literature relies on reference body weights. And if you're not familiar with that, like the reference male that was created back in the 1950s by like MetLife and a lot of these insurance companies, 654 pounds. Reference male, like even non-lifter men are far larger than that now. So we have to be cautious using these reference body weights. Anyway, so they redid the calculations here. It says, in conclusion, just jumping to the end, mean body weight rises over the last 20 plus years, and data-driven estimates of the variance of magnesium, right, in the food supply and intake, indicate that reliable U.S. magnesium RDAs are 60 to 235 milligrams higher for men and 70 to 210 milligrams higher for women. So that's no small amount. The RDA is like 350, I believe. So they're saying go 60 to 200 roughly above that. So it's not going to hurt to go, I would think, 50 to 100 above that just because people are simply larger. So now I would caution, right? We've talked about this before because Mike, you and I have talked about like magnesium chelates and some of the better ways to take it. But if you go nuts and if you take like 400 or 500 milligrams all at once, you're going to be on the potty probably, right? So you have to be careful.
Especially citrate.
Exactly, right? Like what's milk of magnesia? Well, that's magnesium. It's an osmotic laxative. So a lot of the funny thing is, you'll bake your noodle. You look at the upper level tables, the toxicity ceiling, and it's the same or even slightly less in current tables than the RDA. So you're like, how is that possible? Like this is what you need and don't go above it. But that's because of pills, right? From foods, magnesium from foods. If you're seeking them, that's not where the ULs usually come into play. At least in this case, it's more like the pills. So maybe more magnesium. Again, if you want to avoid things like high blood pressure and prediabetes. And, I've known large mammals that fit that bill. So, and especially because, they're larger, and that's what this paper is about. The other one is about ratios. And I don't want people being like, oh, God, Lowry, now I have to worry about the ratio of one mineral to another. But, again, we're covering this in class right now near the end of the semester. But minerals compete with each other, right? They're not like macros or vitamins in that you only have so much capacity for absorption and transport proteins, and so they start to compete with each other, and that's what this is about. So this is dietary supplements containing calcium and magnesium, and their respective ratio is a rising ratio cause for concern. So it says low magnesium intakes coupled with high calcium intakes and a high calcium to magnesium ratio have been associated with increased risk of multiple chronic conditions from cardiovascular disease to metabolic syndrome, again, poor carb handling. That's about 1 out of 3 people, by the way, as well as some cancers such as colorectal, prostate, and esophageal cancer, as well as total mortality. So it says a high dietary calcium to magnesium ratio over 2.6, so more than 2.6 to 1 calcium to magnesium, may affect body magnesium status. And again, the easy way I try to pitch that in class is they compete with each other, right? You're excited. You start taking thousands of milligrams of calcium because grandma has osteoporosis, and you could end up kind of screwing your magnesium status, right? Because these little divalent minerals are going to compete with each other. It says a calcium to magnesium ratio range of 1.7 to 2.6, just weight for weight, has been proposed as an optimum range. So the safe way, I would just simplify that and say 2 to 1. If you're taking calcium, you should take half as much magnesium. Again, keeping in mind that laxative effect, keeping your eye on that. Data from NHANES surveys shows that the mean calcium to magnesium ratio from foods alone in the U.S. has been well over 3. So we're getting more than 3 to 1 calcium to magnesium from foods. This doesn't surprise me because even if you're lactose intolerant, right, a lot of these quote-unquote functional foods, they're putting calcium in OJ and all kinds of stuff. So over 3, so too high. It says supplement-wise, 1/3 of Americans consume a magnesium supplement with a mean dose of 146 milligrams per day. and about a third of Americans consume a calcium supplement, but that mean dose is 479 milligrams a day. So again, from food, too much calcium, and with supplements, too much calcium. So our findings of calculated calcium to magnesium ratios from dietary supplements and foods suggest that an individual with high calcium intakes from diet and or supplements, a magnesium supplement may be warranted to establish a more favorable ratio. So I checked my evening. I take a calcium, magnesium, zinc for simplicity. It's 2-to-1, calcium to magnesium. But yeah, magnesium is one of those under-consumed minerals that I've been concerned about and written some things about for a long time. So, Mike, do you have any thoughts about this? Do you watch that ratio or seek magnesium or anything like that?
Yeah, in general, with most people, they just need more magnesium, especially lifters. You know, like you said, if there's any dietary restrictions or they're, can't consume, milk products or no whey or yogurt or, your typical calcium type sources, then that might be a little bit different. But for most lifters, especially if they're consuming those foods, I just find magnesium is really low or really easy, but it's kind of a rough and dirty back of the envelope is just to scan their dietary log. Look for anything green. It's not like green Skittles or M&Ms or something. And if they're missing like all green things, you can almost guarantee they're super magnesium deficient. Yeah, because the magnesium's the center of the little chlorophyll molecule.
Yeah. It's funny how magnesium is to chlorophyll what iron is to our hemoglobin in our blood. It's very interesting.
Exactly.
I will say this. Also, magnesium is used pharmaceutically as a muscle relaxant. So one of the reasons I take it about an hour before bed, it's probably honestly not enough to do much, but sometimes I'll get restless legs, especially if I've had too much caffeine earlier in the day and that sort of thing. I'm hoping it helps to some extent. But yeah, if you struggle with cramps and that sort of things or muscles too eager to contract, magnesium supplements could help you potentially. Even OBGYN, when my wife was pregnant with my son, she was at risk of premature contractions, premature labor, and so they put her on magnesium to try to calm that shit down, So, yeah.
If you need to make weight for a powerlifting meet and you're like 2 pounds heavy, slam a bottle of magnesium citrate and you will make weight.
Oh my
About
God.
an hour later, you'll be good.
Phil's in the trenches approach.
That stuff works, man. Woo.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's just
they give you before colonoscopies too, I think.
I think so.
But yeah, clear you out.
Worse for the counter stuff, but
yeah. And it's not toxic. It's just an osmotic laxative. Like there's nothing, it just all that magnesium sits in there and draws fluid, and you make weight.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Magnesium citrate's really cheap, so I'll tell people just start with 1 cap at night and then go to maybe 2. If you're a large mammal, maybe 3. And the benefit of taking it at night is you're probably going to be at home. So if you kind of go over your threshold, you're hopefully close to the bathroom. But
that's practical. Yep.
Yeah. And you can get fancier after that if you need to add more magnesium, obviously assuming you're eating, real green things and plants and stuff.
Yep. I think this may especially apply to women, the kind of message they get about osteoporosis and all this kind of stuff, that they're taking calcium pills, and you might want to just add in a magnesium or find some brand that has a ratio that's like that 2-to-1 ratio. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm more convinced that magnesium is probably more important than calcium. I know I get a lot of hate mail for this, but I just find magnesium deficiencies are way more prevalent than I find actual frank calcium deficiencies. And even the osteoporosis thing, if they're not lifting or doing some stimulation to remodel bone, like all the calcium supplements in the world aren't really going to help you a ton.
Calcium, it seems to get a lot of positive press, doesn't it? It just...
Yeah.
Oh, and yet, the Canadians in 2019 dropped dairy from their food guide. They have water, right? Where we have milk, they have water. And people are like, oh, that's a food group from the time we were little kids. And, but it is kind of shocking to see that, Okay, let's go to break, and we'll come back, and I've just, I got some questions for you guys, what you've seen, social irritations from your gym life.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go. Okay, listeners, after more than a decade of joining us on the podcast airwaves, you can now also become viewers on YouTube. This is not our usual simple backup of the audio show, but rather a growing body of video taste tests covering various foods of interest to nutrition enthusiasts, bodybuilders, and powerlifters. From within YouTube, simply search for Iron Radio Taste Test or Nutrition Radio Taste Test. In about 15 minutes, we cover taste and texture similar to other products, usefulness to the co-hosts, and whether we would recommend the product to certain clients. You may even want to watch our podcast feed or Facebook group for which products are coming down the pike so you can taste test them with us. Join us for this new monthly project.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
Alrighty, so we're back. It's Mike and Phil and Lonnie, and we are going to talk about irritants in the gym. Social things that as we reemerge as a globe back into gyms more. In fact, yesterday I went to the university's got an extra little gym area in the field house they just built, and I'm like, I'm there. I mean, the dumbbells are actually big enough, stuff like that. Not that I'm pushing real big dumbbells, but you know what it's usually like when you travel, Mike. Like, oh, here's your 50s, here's your 30s.
50s. Yeah, 35 sometimes.
Oh, man, yeah. So I'm looking at all this new equipment, and it was just like kid in a candy store. I'm like, I just want to go use it, run across the new fallen snow kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, that was the first time I've actually been back in. And I'm vaccinated and everything, because obviously the COVID thing is still a thing, and it's one of the reasons a lot of gyms closed down. The more private clubs and stuff, I think, were less hit than some of the big ones, where you just get the idiots in there. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today is, the idiots maybe. Maybe that's too harsh, but so I've got a couple things on this list. And Phil, I was going to ask you, so first of all, maybe you can explain your history in commercial gyms or how you avoided them or, whatever.
God, basically, I have never been the member of a commercial gym. So I started out with my own training equipment for a long time and then moved to private training centers from there that I was helping at and then my own gym. So I've been to commercial gyms. Like when we first moved back here, we had about a month where, my stuff wasn't set up and I promptly got kicked out of every gym in town within the first visit. So I was like, okay. So then we just trained in our storage unit with a bar and some weights. I know the horror stories, but I've been lucky enough to avoid them primarily just because I've always either trained in my own gym or in my garage or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mike? You've been around.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky. The past 12 years, I've been able to train in my garage, which I converted to a gym / lab / whatever. But traveling a lot, obviously, you're going to be subjected to whatever gyms you can potentially find. And even in the Twin Cities, when I'm back home, I've been home more this past year. I have a gym membership there. I had to go use dumbbells, use some different machines, get out of my house once in a while, once or twice a week. I hadn't been going there at all up until recently, so I've gone there twice before I left to travel again. And even then, I mean, obviously everything is quite different and spaced out, and so I'm just trying to be nice and just use one piece of equipment because you have to clean everything up, and which hopefully will kind of reduce some of the annoyance of one person using 5 pieces of equipment at once. And so I'm just doing some dumbbell bench press, some dumbbell rows. I'm just next to a flat bench. And this kid's like, "Hey man, how many sets do you have left?" And I'm like thinking, well, I was going to do some other accessory work here, but it's getting a little busier. I'm like, okay. I said, I'll be done with these, exercises in 2 sets. It's like, okay, I need to use the bench. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. So I finished my last, 2 sets, and I'm like, I'll just go do some other accessory work. It's not a big deal. And then later I watch him, so he uses the bench once and then disappears to go talk to his friends at another piece of equipment, uses another piece of equipment, and then another piece, and then comes back to the bench again, which of course he left the dumbbells and everything on, like 15 minutes later. Which I'm like, if you're going to use the thing, then use the thing and not. And it was like, starting to get relatively busy in the gym. It wasn't like nobody was there. But he was in a super hurry, and then, he was just wandering around doing whatever. So that kind of annoys me.
That's sort of the flip side, like the butterfly, if you will.
Yeah.
The flip side of the guys who hog a piece of equipment.
Right, who never leave.
Yeah, that happens a handful of times that I can recall. I lift at a gym that's it's not a big box gym. It's a mom and pop kind of gym. It's an 80s style gym. But even then, you get the guy who he brings this giant gym bag and he unpacks like he's on vacation. And he just sets up shop. Like it's in the powerlifting room, like the back room is for powerlifters. But that's where, the squat rack and the power rack, and there's really just like 1 or 2 examples of each of these. So this is a burden, right? It's not like your situation, Phil, where people can go from one to another. There's lots of places to do this. Unpacks everything, knee wraps rolled all out, everything just, and then his foam roller, 20 minutes of that, and you're like, Jesus, man, can you just get it done and then go do that stuff in the corner? Yeah. So that would be the flip side of what you're seeing, Mike, was, you get the butterfly contaminating everything, especially in an age where, you kind of, even in a best case scenario, you should probably wipe down if you really leave a big mess, like the cardio, the exercise bikes at bodybuilders' gym are literally like almost crusty with salt streams down the sides of them. Like, wipe that shit down, And yeah, now it's especially nasty. I mean, since you're bringing that up, that was one of the things on the list was unsanitary behaviors. People are coughing and hacking in their hands and then grabbing the barbell, or spitting on their hands when they grab the barbell, or tracking wet, outside water, onto the platform or something. You're like, come on, man. But Phil, you probably don't have problems with a lot of this stuff because your guys are on a program, or is it just the culture?
And also, I mean, as far as like camping in one area, we teach something that most people teach their infants. It's called sharing. Yeah. And I show people that the bars are loadable. Like those plates come on and off. So like if somebody's squatting 700, you can squat with somebody that squats 300. You merely take a few plates off. And while you're resting, they go. Like my training partner, his max is, 485 or something like that. Mine's 7 something. Guess what? We train together. We pull plates off.
Right.
Those bars are adjustable. So we don't have a lot of that problem. I mean, and then like our all members will also, like, especially one of the older members that's been there forever, Nan. Somebody leaves their shit out, she will call you out. She will like go on social media and blast you like, "Hey, you left your shit out."
Even social media.
She'll publicly shame you. So that stops people from doing that. I mean, and yeah, you won't hear the end of it.
Public
like, you leave
shaming.
a bar out, and yeah, you'll get public shamed. And,
Wow.
yeah, no, it's just we teach sharing and
Yeah.
Try to have enough room for everybody to do their thing. And I'll also adjust. Like, hey man, everybody's benching. Can I do this? Yeah, let's just adjust it today because it's frickin'. We got 20 people benching already forever. So
Yeah, leaving weights.
Fly.
Yeah, you don't leave your weights. I mean, that's like something you should have been taught when you were a kid too. You don't leave a mess, and that means weight on the bar. Yeah.
Especially the leg press in commercial gyms. I don't know what that is, but okay, if you can get on there and do however many crappy reps with 5 45s on each side or whatever, I'm pretty sure you're a capable human to get them off there. But it just boggles my mind sometimes, because then you think someone's actually really using it, and then like 45 minutes go by and you realize like nobody's used it, and they just walked away and just left them there.
Yeah.
I have thought about doing, like, I think it was Louis Simmons that did it. I've thought about doing this on our monolift, and then we have a deadlift platform that basically it's a lot thicker. It's 4 inches thick, just so it won't mess up the floor. So it's like, if you're deadlifting over 500, let's try and go on that.
Yeah.
I thought about just welding 100-pound plates onto those bars.
There you go.
Your first warm up needs to be 55 if you're going to use this.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
So.
Yep. That would do it, because then only the experienced guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I love it.
I mean, if you get enough advanced lifters, you could literally just leave a bar loaded that's the heavy platform.
Yep.
Exactly what you said. If you can't warm up with at least 225, you have to use the other platform.
Yeah.
That's funny. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's really cool. That's clever.
Just weld some hundreds on and call it good.
Yep. Yep. A couple other things. Phil, you have mixed genders. Do you ever have, like the cheesy guy, like fawning on the girl, kind of hitting on her, or that kind of thing, or would your women just beat him up, or what?
That wouldn't last long. So yeah, no, that wouldn't last long. It would they would find themselves leaving. Our own members would police you. We do a good job of policing people. So yeah, no, but I've heard all the horror stories, and it seems like from my outsider view, just from hearing other people, it's like commercial gyms nowadays are. Most people aren't there to actually train. So,
yeah, like a social club.
Yeah. So, and not saying we have a good time. We socialize a lot, but we socialize in between sets.
Oh, right. No, right.
We have a lot of fun and joke around, but yeah.
You know what? And yet, I guess it's the culture there then, because I've trained it. I went from a mom and pop gym where I was sort of the manager to when I moved out west for grad school, I trained at Gold's for a year. And that was pretty, we all know, like, this was San Diego. This isn't like downtown Venice Beach, right? So it's Gen Pop, man. And you did see sort of that, listen, this isn't a bar. You're not here to pick somebody up, kind of thing. Because you're trying to lift. But there's a fine line between what you just said. Stand around, have a joke. Because you can watch even like Arnold in the documentaries. And then they turn on the concentration and get back at it. As opposed to the people who don't do that. Here's an irritation. And they just sit around and they just shoot the shit for 20 minutes. It's like, can you get off of that then?
I don't deal well with people that aren't self-motivated. I can't handle, I
don't either.
Like, I won't take on clients anymore unless they really want their goal. Like, if you need me to constantly cheerlead you, I'm the wrong dude. It ain't happening.
Yeah.
I'll show you the map, and I'll tell you you're doing good, and I'll correct things, but I'm not going to talk you into doing your next set.
You talk you into bargain, yeah.
So
that's actually high on my list, Phil. Is the personal trainers, and I think this may be more than not. That are they think their role is cheerleader. Come on, lightweight, whoop, And when that's happening in the gym, I'm glad I have headphones on, because if I didn't, I'd be like, man, shut up, right? Hey, buddy, shut up. And if your client needs that, go to some wussy gym. This is not going to work here. And that, I suppose, that could even take the form of like the good old boys cliques, that are just especially annoying. grunting, yelling, a little bit of that in good fun. Like if you're on a team, a little bit of encouragement. I'm not saying that's bad, but you know what I mean, where socially I think this can kind of go bad. Maybe you get a couple of guys who they're just convinced that they're on the cover of a Muscle magazine, and they're the badass crew, and they're going to glare at everybody and walk around in the mating posture, and you're like, oh, God. And so you're lucky, Phil. Maybe that's more of a bodybuilding thing. I don't see powerlifters doing that as much. Maybe some swagger, but not like the posing, in the mirror. It's like, listen, you're not practicing. You're not going to compete. What are you doing? You're trying to feed your ego, or what are you doing? So put your arms down, kind of thing.
Yeah, like we have one mirror in the gym, and it's in the bathroom, and it's like 12 by 12 inches, not feet. You're not going to find a place to pose.
Yep. Yep. In fact, I had a student recently say, "Oh, the problem with the new fitness area they put in the field house, there's no mirrors." It's true. I think I did get used to mirrors when I would squat. Like in the early years when I would squat, I couldn't do it without a mirror, and that's the opposite of the way you guys probably think, Phil. Right?
I can't squat in the mirror. Like if there was a power rack, I'd have to go backwards.
Yeah,
and
disorienting.
Look at dead space. Yep.
Yeah.
So because I'd be trying to watch myself.
Right.
Oh, that looks weird. I can't do it. I just need to squat.
Yeah, you got the coach's mind too. You're critiquing yourself.
Yeah. So
it's weird. The gym down here, they have a squat rack that, well, it's on the second floor, so they don't want anyone to lift heavy. I've almost gotten thrown out just by setting dumbbells down. But they put a thin foam mat under the area that you squat now, and it's in front of a mirror. It's one of those like kind of half racks. And so to not be on the little foam mat, which doesn't go under the weights, it goes under your feet. You have to step all the way out of the rack. So I'm like, oh, so they don't really want anyone to squat heavy, because even like warm-up weight, you're like, what the hell is this? I'm trying to watch myself in a mirror, and my feet are going every which way. It's a disaster.
Yeah. So at least from the perspective, and listen, I love bodybuilding. I'm not against that, but it's one thing, like imagine Tom Platz, he pulls off some old school sweatpants, he's been dieting his ass off, he's 6 weeks out from a show, and he needs to take a look at himself or have somebody else. I'm not complaining about that, right? I'm complaining about the people who will never compete. And it's okay, and I guess if you want some motivation or something, but what comes to mind is a young man, he's probably about 20, right before I left the gym. I saw a lot of that, and he's roughly the size of a middleweight-ish wrestler, like mildly muscular. And I'm like, and I try to remind myself, Lonnie, you were kind of that kid once upon a time, so I'm trying to look the other way a little bit and just not indulge it too much.
You don't have to check yourself out in the mirror after every single rep, though.
Yeah. No, right. Yeah. Little impromptu posing seminar for everybody around you, and you weigh 155 pounds, So, anyway. Phil, do you ever have you come across anybody with like, I guess you would run them out of your gym, but swagger, too much like I'm a badass kind of thing, or does that not happen as much?
Oh no, that happens. We've had people come in that they're too big for their britches, and they come in and think they're hot shit. And that's the cool thing is, but most of the time our women can shut them down. We definitely just go by what would you call it? Lead by example. So if you come in, somebody in our gym, if you think you're hot shit, somebody in our gym's going to show you, maybe not. Pretty quickly.
Right.
If you truly aren't and just think you are. But, because we constantly, I don't know. I think it's part of the weird team atmosphere of sports and stuff. The biggest thing we do for each other is not cheer each other on. We talk shit on each other. And that's a motive, but it's all in fun. It's you're poking at each other, but the minute somebody's like getting cocky, it's like, oh yeah, well Gina did that for 4 reps, so shut up, or whatever,
right.
Get back to work. We celebrate your victories, but it's short lived, and it's like, oh, you better get better. So
right, yeah, that's a real coaching technique I've seen over the years. The sort of the good humored busting on people,
Yeah,
that's helpful actually. Even my academic advisor used to be like that, with stuff. Anytime you felt a little bit too much success, you're gonna get taken down a notch.
Yep. So
that's good stuff. Mike, what about are you how much have you fled from commercial gyms? Like you've got practically a commercial gym at home, I'm guessing. Like your setup has got to be pretty good, lots of variety. But where are you with returning to all this, and what are you not looking forward to when you do, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty lucky. Like, I created a platform at home, put a Elite FDS 2x2 rack. At the time, Eric Cressy is like, hey, just call Elite FDS and talk to Wendler. I'm like, okay. So that was a interesting 2.5-hour conversation. It was like 10 minutes on equipment, and it was great. He was super knowledgeable, just great guy. And then it was another 2 hours about testosterone and death metal, so that was fine too.
Yeah, that's your thing, man.
But yeah, this is a Texas power bar, trap bar, all the basic stuff, and then just added more grip stuff, different bars, tire, kegs, stones. Got an inch dumbbell replica, 135-pound, 100-pound inch replica, so all sorts of fun stuff. And I like it. Like most of the time, like this past year even, or especially when I was traveling, this past year's been busier with more work stuff. Oh man, I mean, the amount of sessions that I would have missed if I could only go to a commercial gym, which is literally only like 3/4 of a mile down the road.
Yeah.
I probably would have missed 40% of the sessions I did.
Yeah.
Just to be able to walk out and it's like, okay, I'm just going to do some deadlifts or front squat or kettlebell stuff or whatever. I've only got like 20 minutes some days that there's no way I would even make it to the gym otherwise. So that's been super nice. I do kind of miss the variety. I don't have dumbbells at home on purpose. I've got a bunch of kettlebells, a bunch of other stuff. So do kind of the bro stuff, I guess you could say, at the gym once in a while. Or when you travel, I would try to find a nicer kind of private gym and just do the what I call random bro circuit, where you just kind of look at a bunch of different machines and play with them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
See, that's
always
my favorite.
fun.
Whenever I go, like the last commercial gym I was in was with Dave Lipson up in Colorado.
Oh, nice.
And all we did was machines, and I was wrecked. We just had fun with all the machines, and I couldn't. My lats were so sore the next day. It was all back work, and it was like, if I go to a commercial gym, I'm just gonna be like a kid in a candy store. I want to see what that thing does.
Yeah.
Because I just never get that, and it's fun. I just go in there and have fun with all the machines. So,
smorgasbord, like buffet line of equipment.
2 or 3 sets on each of these 20 machines and see what happens. So
Well, yeah, and I mean, there are advantages. Of course there are. I think I get longer workouts because when I go up to bodybuilders, and like I said, I'm about to return, I'm sure they're going to be like, where were you, man? I'm like, well, I'm middle class and I can't afford to get sick, even on the off chance that my whole family gets sick enough that we need medical care. We can't, I'm covered. I have insurance. It's the bad thing. And I know people that live in the UK or Europe, they're like, oh, I don't understand. Well, no, you don't. But we could burn through 20 grand, not hard to do that. And so I just couldn't afford to do that, for something, especially I'm kicking myself. I pick up something at the gym because, I do lift in kind of a grungy gym. It's not one of these, everybody doesn't walk around with a spray bottle after themselves and kind of thing. The ceiling leaks here and there. And, in some ways it's like Strength Guild, Phil, except, it's got more machines and it's got a separate place for the powerlifters and the bodybuilders. But you know what I mean? It's somewhere between club environment and Gen Pop goobers. But it is in an urban setting, and so you'll get people walk in, and sometimes you're like, oh, here we go, So that's about it, really. I just wanted to touch on some things. I suppose maybe these are things that I'm thinking about because I'm going to head back into the gym, and I'm, and because I'm the kind of guy, my favorite gym is on the rare occasion, like a Saturday or Sunday, I would go in. Nobody, like not a soul.
Yeah.
I love empty gyms, but not everybody's like that, I guess. It depends on your personality, I think.
Yeah. I found, especially from traveling, if I put on headphones with death metal and wear a black shirt that has some death metal band on it where you can't read the writing and you just don't look at anyone the whole time in the gym, like then it's like bearable. Unless I'm there with like people I know or something like that. But
right.
I've made the mistake once or twice of wearing a more, let's say, different color shirt that has like a logo or something that someone could talk to you about on it. That was a mistake.
Right. No, exactly. Because you're kind of inviting, wasted chit chat. Yeah.
Yep. And I forgot about it till, and you forget what a lot of times what you're wearing. So between sets, you're going to get some water, and someone's like, "Oh, hey, blah blah blah," and you're like, "Oh, I just want to get my stuff done.
Right.
I want to talk to you for 20 minutes. I'm not trying to be rude, but
I've heard people comment. I'm back in the day, Lee Labrada. They'd say, "No, he's in out with headphones, doesn't talk to anybody." And you hear that about a lot of people. They just, and I'm there to go inside. Quote unquote, like, put the metal on, earbuds. I'm looking down. I think it was even Tom Platz, and as animated as he could get, I think it was him that they said he just looked down a lot and like he's avoiding you on purpose, man. Don't poke his shoulder and ask him to take out his headphones.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn.
So,
anyway.
Yeah. The last little comment I had was this happened a couple of years ago. I was at the same gym at home, and I don't use like the preformed like easy curl bars all that often, but I don't remember what I was doing. I made some bicep curls, reverse curls, or something. And I'm looking at the whole rack, and I'm like, the 70 pounds is missing. And then it starts to bother me. I'm like, okay, someone's probably in use with it. I'm looking all around the gym. It's not here. It was here when I came in, so it's not broken. I'm like, what the hell? And then it just, for whatever reason, it just starts bothering me. I'm like, I could have just walked out of the gym. And about 10 minutes later, I see this guy go behind the cable machine, and he had put it on end behind there, comes out from around behind the machine with the 70-pound easy curl bar, does some weird upper body, high pull boxing type thing with it that I'm not really sure what it was. And then he goes and sticks it back behind the machine again.
Is he hiding it?
He's hiding it.
God.
And he wasn't using it that much. He was using it like once every 15 minutes, like a gym squirrel, like hiding his equipment in the gym.
Yeah, you do. You run into that kind of weirdness, and it is nice, Phil. In a sense, you're spoiled. You'd be like, dude, get out. No explanation. Yeah. You're fired. You're firing your members, or you don't qualify to be a member. Yeah. The only situation I remember like that, and then we'll close out here, is there was a guy, I mentioned this years ago when it was happening, screamer. Like, this guy's not in shape at all, but he's got on, he's got like the bodybuilding.com bag or whatever, or, whatever it is. He's really excited about this, and every rep, just screaming, and you're like, oh, God. And you can only take it for so long. I mean, every that's, think about it. So 10 yelps, 10 screams, or very loud grunts every set. And after a while, you're like, somebody go talk to Pep at the front desk or one of the kids he's got working. Like, dude, I just can't. Yeah. That's just such a transgression, social faux pas, that you've got to shut that down. Because, it's not helping him either. And he's just got to, so you got to clue that in, because that's almost maladjusted.
Yeah.
All right, cool stuff.
I guess.
Good chat.
Head in. Get my squat on.
Nice. All right.
Yep. I guess.
See ya.
All right.
Catch you later.
See ya. Bye.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the IronRadio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community.
The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on IronRadio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.